Hey folks, April Reigne. I want to show you at least the highlights of today's congressional hearing. It's not being covered that much in the news, and it should be because this has been going on. It's been an issue for 5 years. And they are just now, they being Wells Fargo, they're just now getting around to apologizing and kind of, sort of, but I get the feeling not really remedying the situation. So I've taken the highlights of it from today's hearing, which is September 29th. Enjoy.
Legitimate investigation shows that executives at Wells Fargo either knew or should have known much earlier than 2013 that these practices were taking place. I think that executive conduct at Wells Fargo deserves a thorough investigation by the Department of Justice. Someone is responsible for the broken culture that led to this behavior needs to be held responsible, not the lower level employees that have been left to bear the weight of the mistakes that have been made. This issue is personal for me. The size of Wells Fargo's footprint in California means that many, if not most, of the employees and customers who were victimized by this are my constituents and neighbors. They don't deserve to have their trust violated by Wells Fargo. No one did. I'm still receiving calls in my office complaining about Wells Fargo now, and one caller described how he went into the bank, complained about excessive accounts that he knew nothing about. The employees called the police on him, and he was arrested. And yet violating the public's trust to drive up profits is exactly what Wells Fargo did. In the Senate hearing, it was revealed that even you benefited from that, Mr. Stump. Your own bank account benefited from that deception. Now, I know that you said you take responsibility for these practices and that you are conducting your own investigations and that you and other managers are foregoing some of your compensation. That is welcome, but let me be clear, it's not enough. Unfortunately, this is not the first time we've seen abusive practices at Wells Fargo. We thought that you were working on these practices 6 years ago. Your mortgage executive said right here in this very chair, reassuring my subcommittee that you were committed to fixing Wells Fargo's forgery of mortgage documents, and yet we haven't seen the problem fixed. We've just seen it migrate to another part of your bank. So I hope today we can hear from you, Mr. Stump, because the American public deserves to know what happened at Wells Fargo and why customers were ripped off so blatantly and repeatedly. You can also rest assured that this is just the beginning and that we will be demanding more information until we get to the bottom of this. And of course, I urge your cooperation, and I must tell you that I've known you for a while. I've communicated with you. At times you've been very helpful to my constituents, so I'm very disappointed. And we must get to the bottom of this. And I want to be able to receive the documents and information that we requested from you. I'm told that they have been refused. I think it is in your best interest to come forward with those documents. You have said repeatedly that you were not aware of this widespread fraud in your bank until late in 2013. And it appears that there were activities going on that indicates you may have known much earlier than that. For example, in 2007, just months after you became CEO, the sales quality manual for the community banking division was updated with your executive guidance. As the manual states, that sales guide reminded employees of what should have been obvious, that they needed to obtain a customer's consent before opening an account. And so, am I to understand that you discovered that there was something going on and there was a need for you to do this? That manual also said that sales practices that showed, quote, questionable activity, unquote, would be sent via high priority to bank executives. So it appears that you knew something in 2007 that unauthorized accounts were a big enough problem that you had to correct your employee manual. And as early as 2008, I have documents from court filings showing your employees were contacting your ethics hotline, reporting bank fraud, and complaining to managers over unauthorized accounts. And so, it looks as if you certainly knew in 2008. What's more, I have here a consent order with the Fed from 2011 that puts your company on watch for sales quotas and compensation schemes that pushed employees to break the law. Does this sound familiar? This is stuff.
Ranking Member, I acknowledge that we had a 2011 order from the Federal Reserve, and I think we've always known any sales organization, you're going to have to be diligent because not every team member will do everything right every day. So we have controls built in, we have ethics lines, and I knew, and I still know that, you put people to work every day and mistakes are going to happen. It was not until 2013 when I learned that this problem had been growing. It had been more prevalent and in a certain part of the country, which happens to be in the wonderful part of California in which you live. So these are things we've been working on. All of our strategies around training team members, which get 2 weeks of classroom training before they go out into a branch, is about doing things right, about ethics. And I'd also just want to remind the committee that there are the vast majority of our people who had the same opportunities, the same training, the same goals, who did it right every day for our customers. In fact, our customer loyalty scores now are the highest they've ever been in our company's history.
Let me just point out some other activities that should sound familiar to you. While you were under the consent order for the mortgage arm of Wells Fargo, this fraud was surging in the retail arm of Wells Fargo, but you didn't connect the dots on these high-level trends across the bank. Do you or didn't you know in 2011 that perhaps your sales incentives were driving this fraud?
Congresswoman, I knew that, at least I know today, that we should have done more sooner, but maybe, and not only maybe, some of our people, and again, it's 1%, but that's a big number for a big organization. At any one time, we have 100,000 people in our branch network, and if 800 people, for whatever reason, either misunderstood or use this as a way to be dishonest and break our code of ethics and do something wrong for a customer and something wrong for us, that's why we're removing sales goals. They'll be gone as of this weekend. In fact, we don't even think they're an important requirement anymore for us to continue to grow.
Mr. Stump, some people assume that you change your customer agreement to add forced arbitration clauses for checking accounts, and that these clauses prove to be incredibly helpful when you use them to dismiss multiple customer lawsuits. Is that true?
That's not true. I actually think arbitration does make sense, but in this case, for any customer that might have been harmed in this situation, we're also paying for a mediation process, so they have a mediator.
Recognizing the size of Wells Fargo, $1.9 trillion in assets, with over 6,200 bank branches, 268,000 employees, it's really striking me how huge this bank is. I'm also concerned about whether or not, as chairman and CEO, you can really know what is going on at the bank. I am concerned about the length of time it took you to know what's going on, and I'm concerned that maybe you don't have a handle on your management and what the reporting process is that would make you aware of what's going on. You praise Ms. Tolstad for her management of the division, even though she had fired 1,000 employees for this fraud in 2011, and yet supposedly it took you 2 years to know about what had happened. She didn't tell you. She withheld the information and you indicated in her glowing retirement that she had done a great job. I'm really concerned about whether or not, in fact, you understand that we have been sitting here fighting to implement Dodd-Frank and trying to work out, some of the problems that have been identified with Dodd-Frank. But you on the board of directors of the Financial Services Roundtable. It's an advocacy group for the banking industry that has worked to defund the CFPB, hobble its structure, and remove its ability to curb abusive practices. Now, I want to know perhaps what you think now that Wells Fargo has been caught by the CFPB for all of this fraud. And I wonder if you denounce the Financial Services Roundtable's actions to get the CFPB. In addition to that, while we've been sitting here, I have learned that maybe not only is Wells Fargo too huge to manage, but maybe the reason you don't know some of the detail is because you also sit on a number of big boards. You're sitting on the board of Chevron for $375,000 in total compensation per year, and you're on the board of Target Corporation for $272,000 in total compensation per year. You have a responsibility to them. You have a fiduciary responsibility. And in addition to that, during this hearing, Bloomberg sent out an alert that you will be facing a $20 million penalty for improperly repossessing cars from members of the military. It appears that the company just can't make it through even this congressional hearing without us learning more and more information about what is going on at Wells Fargo. I have come to the conclusion that Wells Fargo should be broken up. It's too big to manage. I served on the conference committee for Dodd-Frank. We talked a lot about the living wills and how to learn more about how these banks are put together and how they operate. And of course, the 5 largest banks in this country have failed the living wills test, including Wells Fargo. And so I'm looking at living wills and the inability to pass the test. I'm looking at stress testing. I'm looking at size. I'm looking at this particular fraud that has gone on. And I'm worried for the whole banking community that the public cannot and will not continue to trust our banks. But they're looking at us. And they're saying, for all of you, particularly those of you who serve on the Financial Services Committee, you're letting us down. You're not protecting us. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be talking with you and the members of this committee who showed their outrage here today. I'm moving forward to break up Wells Fargo Bank.
As I said before, I'm sorry that we didn't get this right. I take this very seriously. I'm not in denial. And we will get this right. We will fix this. We do a lot of things really great. California is our home state. We've been there for 164 years. We are a major employer, a major philanthropic, and we are privileged to serve so many great customers there, and we'll do that the best way possible.